Good afternoon, Roxy Soxy.
Good evening from Los Angeles, my friend.
From Los Angeles all the way. I feel like I have to talk louder so you can hear me all the way from Australia.
Los Angeles and Australia in the house.
I feel like I'm so far away from you, and yet you seem so close.
I
you
know.
Seem right there.
Like right here. Look, I'm reaching out to you.
I can touch you. Are you touching me?
Yeah.
It's so depressing, but yet, like technology is so incredible, especially during this pandemic, because we're able to like see our loved ones. But it's also really sad because it's like there's a computer screen, and you feel like you can't really get through that computer screen. So it's a dichotomy, that's for sure.
It is. It's like we're so close, but so far. One day soon, hopefully, we will be reunited side by side in real life. And
I can touch you because the last time I saw you, like you showed me your boobs, and like now I haven't been able to like come 6 feet like close. That was our last encounter.
Just a little peek.
Just a little peek to see what's going. We went in for a facial. And we ended up showing our boobs. Oh my goodness! Those were the days. Yeah. Those were the pre-COVID days, Roxy.
Right, because facial and boobs go hand in hand.
They do, especially for females. They're like, does this look good? Does this look good? Well, talking about like the female areas, see that segue right there, boobs and such. I think when I was in Austin, all of a sudden I was rushed to the emergency. I think you remember that night. It was just the night before Easter. They actually thought I had a bowel obstruction of all things because I was having these severe pain like down near my abdomen. And apparently if you have something called a bowel obstruction, which is exactly what it sounds like something's obstructing the bowel, that you can literally it can be fatal within seconds. So they rushed me to the ER. I felt kind of fine other than this weird intermittent pain that I was getting. And I thought to myself, well, what else could it be? They checked me in after 2 hours. They did all these tests. They did these CAT scans. They did like one of those, I had to take all this iodine so they could see what was going on in my body. And they didn't find anything. They didn't find a bowel obstruction, which was kind of great, but also very confusing because I was like, well, then what is it? But when they did a scan of my stomach, like what are the scans that they do with the OBs? They do the
ultrasound.
When they check the baby, the ultrasound. Thank you. I haven't had much sleep. So when they do the ultrasound, they found that I had a massive cyst on my left ovary. Now, I don't know much about cysts. So what I did was, of course, when you find things that, you don't like, you don't go to a doctor, you go to the web. And I put up on my social media, like, does anyone else have cysts or suffer from any of these issues? And there was thousands and thousands of women who said that they suffered from these issues, which everything from endometriosis to PCOS to just hormonal fertility issues. So I thought, we should talk about the subject and kind of bring some awareness towards it.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting topic that actually touches a lot of women, like you're saying. And it's, it can range from something completely, benign to something that gets much worse. So it's like really important to be informed about these things, because I think sometimes people like kind of throw it around loosely, I have a cyst or whatever, but it like really there's a lot to know about this issue. And I'm something that I'm really, really interested in myself, because I hear like you and like friends talk about having these things, and it's scary,
Yeah, and sometimes you have it. So like it hasn't ever affected my life until recently. You have it for so long and have no idea. And then the doctors misdiagnose so much of this, which is what I found through social media. Like, I was told that I was just making this up, or that I don't have a high pain tolerance, or that, I'm just have heavy periods. There's nothing I can do about it. So, we have Brigitte Warne on today, who is pregnant, by the way, which we'll talk about later. She's a mama, a business, she's a podcaster, an advocate for PCOS awareness and hormone health. She has a degree in public health and health promotion and commerce. She's founded an online community, PCOS to Wellness. So she really knows a lot about this subject. She talks about infertility. She educates women about, the knowledge and awareness of these subjects. So welcome, Brigitte Warne.
Thank you. What an intro.
I know. We're known for our intros, aren't we, Roxy?
We are. We love introing our guests. And wait till you hear the song at the end.
Oh yes. Wait till you hear our outro.
I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm also excited.
So, Bridget, what was your journey like discovering PCOS, like in your own body? Like, was it something that became, you had symptoms of and you went to the doctor and discovered, or how did the whole thing sort of come about?
And also to back onto that, what is PCOS? Because
Yes.
I think a lot of people are confused about that term. So just to maybe say in your own experience what it is and how it did affect you.
Absolutely. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, which in itself is kind of a confusing name, but we can kind of get to that a bit later on. But basically, my journey with PCOS was, I think, pretty similar to a lot of other women out there in that I, from a young age, like a teenager, had really irregular menstrual cycles, kind of got to like my later teens, was starting to struggle with acne, and went to the doctor, and the doctor was sort of like, hey, I've got this great fix for like both these problems. We will put you on the pill, the contraceptive pill, and not only will this like create this magic period, this regular period, but it's also going to clear up your acne. And I was like, whoa, I was, 16, 17. I was like, this is a game changer. Sign me up. So I was on that for nearly 10 years. And it did. It cleared up my skin. And I had what I thought was a period coming every month, nice and regular, pain-free, really nice and easy little period. Never honestly didn't think much about it. It wasn't until actually I got married and kind of decided like, oh, now I guess would be a good time to come off the pill when we want to start getting ready to have babies. So that was, I guess, where things started to really, that was like the real start of the journey because I came off the pill. And within, honestly, a few weeks of being off the pill, I started to notice some symptoms. So I started to break out with, tiny little acne all over my face. I started to get migraines. I started to go through these like crazy, it was almost like withdrawal symptoms. I was like oily and sweaty. I had brain fog. I started to become really anxious. And that was just in the first few weeks. And I kind of thought, and people had prepared me for it and said, this can just be a side effect of coming off the pill. And I was like, okay, I'm prepared to wait this out for a few months because that's what everyone says. It could take around 3 months for your hormones to re-regulate. And usually by that point, you should be looking pretty normal after then. So I was like, okay, I've just got to get through this process. Kind of like 3 months went by and it wasn't not only not getting better, it was getting progressively worse. So the little acne had started to turn into like deep cystic acne not over just my face, but like my body and my back. And I probably should point out this point as well that I was modeling full time at this point. So it was really detrimental, not only for like my like what I felt like physically, but also I couldn't earn money. It was quite a stressful time. So between that and then my hair starting to fall out, I kind of was like, something is not right here. Like, this is not what should be happening. So I had acne, hair falling out. My anxiety was through the roof. I started to feel really down all the time and no menstrual cycle in sight. So we're kind of getting at the 6 month mark and I'm going, this is really not normal. Went off to see a few different doctors. They all kind of said the same thing. Hey, this is just part of it. Like, it might take longer for you. Here's some antibiotics for your skin. Here's some creams, like off you go on your way. And in my gut, I just knew that this wasn't right. I really did. My background is actually in health. So I really was like, I just need to follow my own instinct here. And I'm not going to stop until I kind of find out what the answer is. So I went to around 5 different GPs and I eventually found a GP who kind of said to me like, look, we could do tests, but it's sort of pointless. And I was like, no, I want to do the tests. I want to do whatever tests you're suggesting. I want to do them. She kind of made me beg for them. I ended up having to say, I'll pay for the tests out of my own pocket. I cried. I said, just still let me do something. If I could just find out what's going on, that will be really helpful for me because then I can work out what to do from here. So in the end, I got sent off. I had some tests done. It was all blood tests. And it came back that I had really high testosterone and like androgen levels. And she was really taken aback by it, because at no point did anyone sort of say to me, we think you might have PCOS. And the reason being was because I was like a lean type person, you know, I wasn't overweight. And I think there's this really common misconception that a lot of women with PCOS are overweight, and it's just not the case. In fact, the criteria for PCOS is having irregular menstrual cycles. You have to have two out of the three criteria. So irregular menstrual cycles, high testosterone levels, and that can be shown either physically, so with your symptoms, so acne and hair loss or hirsutism, but also on a blood test. Or the third one is having an ultrasound, and if you have cysts on your ovaries. So you only have to have 2 out of those 3, though. So you can essentially have PCOS without having any cysts on your ovaries, if that makes sense, or without having any. And
if, sorry to interrupt, if you have a cyst on your ovaries, does that automatically mean you have polycystic ovary syndrome, even if you just have one?
No, it doesn't. In fact, most women will have cysts on their ovaries. So it's actually very, very common to have cysts on your ovaries. And that's why it's very confusing. I mean, you know, women in adolescence, like 70% of them will have cysts on their ovaries. That's just part of it. So it's very confusing, and that the name is quite misleading in that regard. But a lot of women do have cysts on their ovaries, and that is part of it as well. So this is where it gets very confusing, and it's one of those conditions that is really overdiagnosed, but also really underdiagnosed, because doctors are going off by like perhaps just an ultrasound alone. So they're just seeing cysts on the ovaries, and they're going, okay, you've got polycystic ovaries, but you don't meet the other criteria. Or vice versa. In my case, I wasn't meeting, you know, the other criteria, and so they weren't diagnosing me with PCOS. So it's sort of, it's a bit of a tricky one. But essentially from there, I was diagnosed with PCOS, and I guess that's where my just sort of journey began. And I was at this crossroads where I was given the concept of, I was essentially told flat out I wasn't going to be able to have kids naturally. That was sort of said to me, and that was really
because is that a symptom of PCOS if you cannot have children? If you suffer from, or it's harder to have children.
Yeah. Well, PCOS is the number one cause of infertility in women. So, but that sounds really scary, but it also isn't. And that, I think this is where it gets really confusing, is that's what women are told, and that's the statistic, but it doesn't mean you can't. And there are so many women that are testament to this. It's just a lot of women they hear this and they kind of like, that's it, you know, that's the end of the line for them. And unfortunately, with a lot of our healthcare systems, there's not a lot of support in place to help women actually overcome and manage their symptoms to the point where, you know, you will get your cycle back, you will be able to manage all your symptoms, you will be able to fall pregnant. It just requires a little bit of work, well, a lot of work, a lot of perseverance, a lot of education and knowledge and understanding your body. But we don't get that in a 10-minute consult with our doctor. So a lot of the time women then go on to either do IVF, or they'll have ovulating inducing drugs. And that's a completely, you know, I think viable journey as well. I think what should be happening is that we get the option and we get the knowledge to make those choices and decide which route we want to go down before we, you know, necessarily feel like the only way to go down is the medical route, which is just not true in a lot of cases.
So what is like the way to kind of treat this holistically? I mean, if you don't want to go like the IVF route and kind of that, what is the holistic way to kind of treat PCOS?
I mean, you really have to work out, why is there an imbalance going on? And I think that's if you can get to that point, because the reason you're having these symptoms is because there's an imbalance in your body, and the symptoms are purely our body's way of telling us, hey, something's not right here. So in most women's cases with PCOS, it's testosterone levels are too high, and that's why we get things like the acne and the hair loss, and some women will get the facial hair and the weight gain and all those types of things. So we have to then go and look at our hormones. And so I think a really good first step is just getting your hormones tested, having a look at that and just seeing what's going on. For me, I went down the naturopath route originally, and that's, you know, went and saw a naturopath, and you can't just say there's one thing. I had to change basically my entire life. And that sounds drastic, but it kind of wasn't when you're at the point of like, is this going to, I need to address the root cause here, because anything I do that's like a pill or anything like that, that's purely a Band-Aid solution. So for me, it was looking at, you know, reducing inflammatory foods in my diet. So anything that was inflammatory, which could be causing my hormones to go out of whack, or even things like stress is a huge one for women. You know, our cortisol spikes. Cortisol is a hormone. It overrides all our other hormones.
That's my entire life is just cortisol, I swear.
Yeah, right. And so many women, it is. And we live in this world now where it's kind of like back in the day we were in the, like, you know, flight or fight. So if we were primitive, we were, you know, let's talk caveman kind of thing. It's like we were in a resting state until we had to run for our lives kind of thing. Now we are in this bizarre state of kind of always being in flight mode because we're mums, we're business owners, we're working, we're studying, we're socializing, we're going to the gym, like we're doing so many things. And so our body's just like on constant overdrive trying to keep up with everything. And we don't really have those down moments much anymore, which I think is a big factor and something that we really don't give enough credit to when it comes to a lot of health conditions that stress can be underlining. But even things for me was stopping doing any high intense workouts and just going to like walking, yoga, going back outside, because all of that, you know, that stuff, not only did it not raise my cortisol, it lowered it. And so that was really, really important to me. So diet is a massive one, cutting out any inflammatory food. So I'm talking like, you know, alcohol, coffee,
Roxy! How is she going to do without alcohol, coffee, sugar?
I know.
Yeah, I'm like, the story of my life. Those are like all the fun things.
Well, it kind of is. It's the fluffy white carbs, the sugar, all the delicious things.
They call it the CATs, the caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, and sugar are the 4 worst things for anxiety, depression, mental health, hormones, all the things. But it's really interesting because I do feel like in the beginning of when you cut that stuff out, you do feel worse and you do crave it because it also is also part of your lifestyle. Like when you pick up a glass of wine or some alcohol, you're telling yourself that you give yourself permission to relax. So it's like you're actually having to retrain your brain through your whole system of your day, you know?
Yeah.
Once you start to, they say that actually habits are broken not in 21 days. They're actually broken within like 3 months, really, like real habits. Yeah. So once you're doing something consistently every single day, and I did it with caffeine, I haven't had caffeine in 4 years. And now I don't crave caffeine, nor do I crave the ritual of sitting down and having the coffee and making it an experience anymore, because that ritual is gone. I think we're more addicted to the ritual than how the things actually taste or make us feel. Like it's that ritualistic flow throughout our day that we're more addicted to than the actual thing itself, I think. So
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's like the smell.
Like cut that stuff out.
Yeah, like all the senses are awakened when you have like.
For you, Roxy, it's like you believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you believe if you have alcohol, then you give yourself permission to relax. So there just has to be other ways that you can give yourself permission to relax that isn't through alcohol. Like maybe it's a hot bath or whatever it is in your day that gives yourself that moment.
It's just not as fun though.
It's not as fun, but it's better for you.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
It's so hard. Or a glass of wine with a hot bath. I mean, you can't be that.
But why don't you just bath in the wine, Roxy? Why don't you just do that?
Cleopatra did.
Now she's Cleopatra. Now it's Roxapatra.
That's right.
Look, I think, funny. I don't know. I think my hormones after having kids, I didn't really focus on my hormones as much. And then you have kids and I don't know what happens. Like for me, I just bottomed out. And I think that that's also, the micronutrient deficiency that we experience post-birth and the exhaustion and the lack of sleep and the lack of connection. Like we used to raise children in a village. So because we used to raise children in a village, we were able to take care of ourselves more. So what happens in, the collateral damage literally is our bodies after we've gone through birth and raising kids sort of by ourselves. Then we're just kind of left in the dust with all these like issues. And I think that hormones are based in how well your body is actually doing. And if it's not doing well, your hormones are also going to suffer. So like post-birth, I find it hard. Like I feel like my hair is getting thinner. I feel like I just noticed there was like hair in different places on my legs that I didn't have. So I'm assuming that it's a hormone imbalance, but even if it's just not PCOS, there's other things too. There's endometriosis, there's perimenopause, there's menopause, you know, like we don't like to talk about that because we feel like I'm in my 30s. I don't feel like I should be talking about perimenopause. Australian. Perimenopause,
yeah.
But I feel like we need to because it can happen earlier and earlier based on the fact that our hormones are fucked.
Yes. Well, essentially, like over 35, most women are in perimenopause by, you know, starting at 35. So yeah, it's definitely something that we don't talk about. But perimenopause can go on for a really long time, and it doesn't mean that you can't have children or anything. It's just something that we don't talk about, and we totally should, because it's such a big part of our lives, and there's so much going on during that stage in our lives as well. There's so many hormone fluctuations. We really need to be like prioritizing our health. So many women have had babies by that point, and like you said, are depleted by so many nutrients. And yeah, it's a tough one. Hormones are like really rule your life, and I don't think I had any understanding of that until I was faced with my own hormonal imbalance, and it was really stared me straight in the face and said, hey, you need to do something about this, you need to address it. And I did. Like, I was pretty hardcore in the first, say, 3 to 6 months. Like I said, I cut out kind of anything I thought was inflammatory. I was on like every single herb you can possibly think of. I found social situations really hard because I had cut out so much, and I felt like I didn't look like myself, and I was embarrassed and ashamed by what I looked like. But I also was like, I don't want to go out and feel the pressure of having to have a drink or eating foods that I know aren't going to be good for me, or having to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, I found that aspect of it really hard. But in the end, it's sort of like this, it got to sort of 6 months and I started to see results. And that's what was really positive for me. And what you hit the nail on the head when you said it's like the rituals that you're addicted to as well. Like,
right.
I loved having like my coffee meetings and stuff like that. And so for me, it was switching over to like herbal teas, and herbal teas have ended up playing like a huge part in my life, because I've gone on to work with naturopaths to create herbal blends specific for hormone imbalances and, you know, for my own self. And now I sell them. But for me, it was replacing that and having something to do other than the coffees, which was what I was doing at that time.
It's like when people say that they're smokers, and they like say the worst part is knowing what to do with your fingers.
Yes.
You know, and that's why you end up eating so much more, because like you don't know what to do with your hands because they're constantly occupied. But no, hormones are just I don't know, Rox, like are you noticing, like, as I have a birthday next week and I'm having like a complete meltdown just because I'm like, oh my goodness, like, do you not remember when everyone was younger than you and now you're like, shit, everyone's now like, sorry, everyone was older than you, and now you're like, oh shit, now everyone's younger than you. How did that happen? Like, I'm in the gym going, these people are probably 10 years younger than me in here. Like, how did that happen so fast?
They're like officially legit people who are like, quote unquote, grown-ups who were born in like the year 2003. It's so crazy.
Like, but that is.
Yes, but no, going back to what you're saying about hormones, it's interesting because I think, especially with the pill, I know, like, and I know a lot of women have gone through this because it's pretty common that after you have a baby, you know, your gynecologist wants to get you on a pill right away. So you don't, you know, get pregnant and everything like right away. And I just remember I didn't do it. And I was still breastfeeding at the time, and I breastfed for a year, but it took me 2 years after I stopped breastfeeding to get my period back. Because my hormones
2 years after
I stopped breastfeeding, for my body to naturally regulate to give me my period back after I stopped breastfeeding. And now I look back and I wonder, I go, gosh, I wish I maybe had done more digging, because perhaps I had something like this, you know, like it was holding off my periods, and like, you know, it just was really odd. Like, I'm like, it definitely had to be a hormone imbalance. Something was going on, but maybe it was this too. I don't know.
It's so hard to know. And I think as well, just being on the pill in general depletes our bodies of so many nutrients, like, you know, zinc, folate, vitamin D, like magnesium, B12, like all of those things are, they're really common depletions in women who have PCOS. But if you've been on the pill, like all of that stuff is being depleted. The pill essentially shuts down our hormones. So even though we're getting our bleed, that's not a period. That's a synthetic bleed that we're getting to make us think we're getting a period. That our body isn't ovulating. And if our body isn't ovulating, we're not making all those hormones. There's no balance going on. I think that's something that no one explains to us when we put on the pill. I certainly wasn't explained that when I was younger. And I kind of just wish, looking back, like if I had been told that actually that this pill isn't fixing my symptoms. It's just purely masking them and putting a Band-Aid on it. And when, as soon as I come off it, it's going to come back, if not 10 times worse, which is what happened in my case. And I had 10 years of being on the pill and the damage it had done to sort of like undo, which is really hectic. And even things like your gut health, like the gut health is, you know, such a big player when it comes to hormone health. And if you've been on the pill, or if you've been on antibiotics at any point in your life, like your gut health is most likely depleted, but we don't hear about that enough. And that's, again, such a big player when it comes to hormone health. And so I think PCOS, for example, it's estimated 1 in 10 women have PCOS. Well, that's what the diagnosis is, but it's actually most likely a lot more than that because it's such an underdiagnosed condition. And the same with endometriosis. Again, same thing. It takes, I can't remember what it was. I think it's like an average of, might even be more than this, but like 7 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. And like, you know, that's debilitating pain for those women for so long. And PCOS is a really long one to be diagnosed as well. So, yeah, I mean, you could be living with these conditions for so long and never know. I think PCOS is, you know, realistically as well, has only really come to the forefront in the last, say, 10 years. Before that, women had it and just didn't know that they had it. They just were like, why can't I have kids? And they were just told they couldn't have kids. End of story, you're infertile. Yeah. Crazy.
I never went on the pill. I went on the pill once, and I remember, like, I vividly remember taking it. And after like 2 days, I was so angry and so aggressive. I remember I threw a shoe at a TV. I can't even remember. Poor guy that I was even with. I threw my shoe at a TV and it broke. Like it had there's like a crack went into the TV. And I thought, like, this is unhealthy. Like, this is unnatural. Like, I tried it twice and I just couldn't do it. I'm very shocked that I didn't get pregnant all throughout my 20s. Oh, my Lord. But I honestly, and this is probably not what a lot of people think, but I would have preferred to have like gotten pregnant than to have felt like that every day. Because for me, it just messed with my emotions. So there are certain people that I just think shouldn't be on the pill, like hormonally at all, ever.
Yeah, I mean, and it's actually interesting to say that because there's a great naturopath called Lara Bryden who wrote a really great book if anyone's interested, and it's all about hormone health and everything. But she has sort of said as well, she's like, worst case scenario, the morning after pill is probably a better option than being on the pill, because that's just like a much like less invasive option than a pill that shuts down your entire hormonal system. So, and I feel like I'm like, yeah, I'd always been like kind of like, oh, that morning after pill must be so much stronger and all this kind of stuff. But the way she explained it, I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Like obviously it's not an ideal situation if you have to take it, but if that's the option as opposed to being on something that shuts down your entire hormonal system, that maybe that is a better option for a lot of women. And
why aren't we talking about what men, like, I love men, I'm married to one, have a 10-year wedding anniversary next week, but like, why aren't we developing contraceptives for men? I know that they are, but it's been very slow to the punch. Let's put it that way.
I think I was just going to say, I think it's like the patriarchal medical system too, right? It's like, quote unquote, our responsibility, right? It's like the woman's responsibility. Like, we're the ones that are, you know, that should be inconveniencing our bodies, you know, whereas men are kind of like, oh, boys will be boys, let them be, you know, they do what they naturally want to do. And it's not fair, you know?
It's crazy.
Also, men can get pregnant, can get a different woman pregnant every day. And we only can get pregnant once within the year. Think about that for a second. If we get pregnant, it'll take a whole 2 months to get pregnant, and then we'll probably be able to get pregnant for those 2 months afterwards. So we can get pregnant once a year, and they can get any woman pregnant every single day. So why aren't we spending more time and research into figuring out male contraceptives?
Well, did you see that study that they literally made this contraceptive for men, and they did like an entire trial period on it, and they stopped the trial because the men were saying that they felt moody and grumpy and crampy and like, and every symptom that we get, they said that they felt, and so they literally stopped the trial because they felt like the side effects were too strong for these men, and so they canned it. So that was like just an instant, oh, it didn't work, we blew bother, we tried. It's crazy.
Look, I love men, and I think that, they're the best in the world. And if I had a son, I'd be super happy to have a son, and I love my husband. But I do think that the pain threshold for women is so vastly different. And I do think it's maybe because of how we genetically are made up. But I also think that it's because when you've lived with pain for so long, it's almost like you disassociate yourself from it actually meaning something, and you just live day to day with something that is hurtful to you, but you don't know any different, right? I had such severe period pain every single month until I gave birth. My period pain went completely away post-birth. I don't know if that happens to a lot of people, but before that, I had such severe pain, and I just accepted it. I just went to work, had so many clots. I mean, I would heavily bleed. That's the one good thing, is you get older, you bleed less. But I would bleed for 7 days heavily. And I just sucked it up. Like, don't we? We just suck it up.
Yeah, we suck it up. We take it. We just do what we have to do. It's like we just move on. But I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of the men I know could do that as frequently.
Who are they, Broxy?
That's what I'm
name them now.
I'm literally trying to.
I don't think it's David.
No, I'm literally trying to give some credit to some man out there. I'm like, somebody has got to step up. But it's funny because they literally are not. They just. I don't think they could do it. I don't think they could do what we do.
I think it's interesting when, and again, it sounds like we're man bashing, but
we're not. We're married to men. We love men.
We're married. We love them. But my family will all get the stomach flu, right? So I have a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, me, and my husband will all get the stomach flu. And it's my 2-year-old will be bouncing back within 24 hours. My other one, 36 hours. I'll still be vomiting and, doing stuff with the kids. And my husband will be out for the count for 7 days. Can't move, dying, end of the world. How are we going to literally can't move, can't eat, can't drink, nothing. And yet all of us have had the same thing. He always says to me, he goes, well, maybe it moves through bodies differently. And I'm like, sure, okay.
Sure, we'll go with
but
that.
It's always so much worse. And he says it's always worse when you get it secondhand. And I'm like, never heard of that.
Yes, no, it's so true. No, they're full of it. Because, unless they're taking advantage of us and not telling us and taking the extra.
I think that they actually feel that sick. I think that they feel that sick.
Do. But it's crazy. I could literally be bleeding out of my eyeballs, still taking care of my daughter, answering work emails, and doing a conference call. And it's my husband gets the sniffles and is like, I don't think I'll be making it today. And I'm like, come on,
So funny.
It's funny though. Maybe it is their physiology. Maybe they just can't.
I think they honestly feel that ill. I honestly think they feel like they're gonna die. I do.
Yeah, I do too. And I also think that the concept of still having to soldier on and multitask during those sick times is kind of non-existent to them. And so last week I was pregnant, had cyanitis. I've got a 2-year-old. I run 2 businesses, and I had to just continue on as normal. And my beautiful, amazing hubby Jesse, he was had a little bit of a runny nose and something going down at work, and he's just I can't do anything. I just need to focus on this one thing. And I was like, oh my God. But I mean, the other thing I have found as well, and I don't know if this is just in my situation, but I don't think we talk about when, let's say, hormones, for example, a lot of men are completely clueless and in the dark about that stuff. And they don't really understand how much it affects us on so many different levels. And I do think that even with my own husband, him, just seeing him understanding, the menstrual cycle, understanding that there's really only a very short period within each month where we may be able to fall pregnant. I think men just think we might have sex and fall pregnant. They don't really understand that it's actually a miracle if you do fall pregnant because of everything that has to go on for that to happen. It's crazy. And I have a son, and I'm sort of well, I really want him to grow up understanding and being aware of what goes on with women's bodies and how powerful they are and how amazing they are, and what can go on during the different phases of the month and the different moods and how we might be feeling and all that kind of thing, because I think that's really powerful and beneficial for them to know, because they can help us by knowing all this, and they can really tap into those times where we might need a bit of extra comforting, or we might not feel like doing things, or even like we recently went through a miscarriage, and that was really heartbreaking. But I don't think because he'd heard of other people having miscarriages, but his friends don't talk about that, you know, whereas as women, we talk about that a bit more, and we're a bit more open about that with our friends, whereas his friends, he wouldn't know if any of his friends have had a miscarriage, you know. So that was a really eye-opening experience for us to go through as well. And I think for him, and to be, now he's quite open about it and quite happy to talk about it. But I don't know, it's really different with men.
Yeah, I think it's
miscarriages. Miscarriage also
it's important to be like really transparent with your children too when it comes to health issues, because I've noticed that, you know, like my daughter will come into the bathroom, like, you know, if I'm changing my tampon or what have you, because you know how kids are, they don't care if the door's closed or not.
That's privacy.
Yes. And so she'll just come in, and it's like, you know, I started to tell her from a very early age, you know, 2 years old and up, of course, like age appropriate, kind of explaining what a period is, you know, and the menstrual cycle. And like that one day she too will have a menstrual cycle, and it's not dirty and it's not something to be ashamed of, you know. It's like, it's really important that this is like a very important function of your body. It's part of your health, you know. And it's like, I think it's really important to communicate that message to kids, because Tam and I, we both have all daughters, and it's like, really getting that message across so these girls don't grow up feeling dirty and, you know, ashamed of their bodies.
When did it get shameful? Like I remember when I first got my period, and I was so embarrassed. Like I was so embarrassed, but yet all it is blood from an egg every month, signifying that you're not pregnant. That's really all it is.
It's actually,
so why have we made it disgusting? I remember someone DM'd me because I asked, like, what is something that's taboo that you like, and someone said period sex, right? And someone messaged me, she was like, that is just revolting, it's disgusting. Now I get if it's not your flavor and it's not something that you like to do, but I don't know if it's disgusting. It's just a form of like excretion, whatever. Like, so why is the excretion, that's such a weird word to use, like okay when it's like that mucus when you know it comes out when you're ovulating? What's different than blood? Because we've almost told ourselves that the blood is dirty and shameful and gross, and the actual blood itself isn't sanitary, when it actually really is. When it comes out of your body, when you're clean, there's nothing wrong with having period sex, and it actually alleviates pain and depression and anxiety and helps you sleep. There's a lot of things that, you know, having an orgasm on your period can do. And I just think it's like, oh, okay, like it's interesting that her reaction was one based in disgust and shame, rather than like, oh, it's just not my preference. Like, I get it, not your preference. Don't want to. You have nice sheets; they're expensive. Totally get it. I get it, but don't do it. Not do it because you think it's dirty.
Right. You know, it's interesting. Isn't that an interesting question though? Because I feel like, Tammin, just going back to your question about when did it become disgusting, or when did we think it was like shameful to have a period? I remember the first time I got my period, waking up feeling embarrassed and feeling shamed, you know, like not shame, like shame about my body, you know, like feeling embarrassed about it. So that maybe it's right at the beginning. I mean, maybe we always feel like that about it.
But no, maybe it's because the generation our parents were in, were taught that it was such a taboo subject. Like, I don't remember my mom getting her period. I don't remember seeing my mom get her period or walk into the bathroom and see blood. I don't remember any of that. I remember learning through my school PD, which is personal development. I remember learning about a period, but I never saw it firsthand or my mom's reaction to it. Doesn't make her a bad person at all. It's just that generation. So hopefully the fact that our kids walk in and we've got a period, or, oh no, like I've accidentally leaked on my pants, and your husband's like, oh, I'll wash those pants. And he doesn't go, oh my goodness, you've bled on your pants. Like, it's just something that's just so natural and in part of the conversation. Maybe then our kids won't think that it's like, Phoenix is saying we get a period almost every month. And I'm like, she goes, oh, it's blood. And I'm like, yeah, it's blood. And so hopefully when she sees blood, she's like, oh, it's blood. You know?
Yeah.
And hey, hopefully we can turn it into a positive thing. Hey, you're getting your period. That means everything's going really well. You know, that means let's take that as your report card. If you're getting a great healthy period every month, like everything is ticking along really nicely, and it should be seen as this positive, empowering thing as opposed to a really negative, shameful thing, which I totally agree. I think it was our parents' generation and their parents' generation that created this taboo, quite shameful, secretive thing. It was like really no one talked about it. I remember finding tampons in my mum's bathroom and being like, what the heck are these?
Where does that go?
I was like, what is going on here? And then even the next thing I think we should really be focusing on is the type of education that our children are receiving in school, because I mean, I know here in Australia, and you could probably vouch for this too, Tama, but it's pretty basic. It's like, here's a condom, put it on a banana, you know, you're going to get a period once a month and have safe sex. Like, that's basically what we got. It's pretty not much more in depth than that. But I think if we could really talk about the menstrual cycle, what's going on, the different, you know, signs and symptoms to be looking out for, what's normal, what's not, because pain isn't normal. And so many women
colors is an indication if it's normal. Clots is an indication if it's normal. Pain is an indication if it's normal. But going back to your point, like, I think it's becoming less of a taboo subject because obviously of social media and people like yourself who are talking about it. But also, like, I was on set during this film that I just recently finished, and I asked the runner, who was like a 24-year-old guy, to go get me pads and tampons, and he didn't even blink an eye. So it made me realize, like, oh my goodness, like, it is getting better. Like, he didn't go, oh my goodness, I have to, like, I'm 25-year-old.
How embarrassing.
25 years old, and I'm a boy, and I have to go to the local IGA and go get tampons. Like, he was like, oh, no problem. So I'm hoping that this is just becomes the norm. Like, it just is like, it's not like she's on her period, stay away. It's like, oh, she's on her period. That's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. And, but even like for myself, I know, like, I had this weird thing about period cups, like menstrual cups. Right. And I was like, how gross. Like, I would never use a period cup, blah, blah, blah. But it was purely this weird thing I had stuck in my head for no reason other than, like, probably marketing and the way I'd grown up and all this kind of stuff. And now I can't imagine having a period without using a period cup. Like, it's the best thing that's ever happened. Oh my God.
I've never
the undies are great too.
I did the undies, although, like, I don't know, so no one explained this to me. Are you supposed to change your undies every 2 hours? Because I kind of left it on all day, and by the end I was like, it kind of feels wet down here.
Yeah, I think it depends.
But it didn't leak on the outside, so that's the good
main
news.
thing.
It felt wet on the inside, but the outside was completely dry, which was fascinating. An entire day with your period, Roxy, not leaking at all.
I need to try this because I'll keep hearing about them. Yeah, are they so good? So you just throw the undies away when you're done with them?
No, you just wash them.
You wash them and you keep them and you reuse them. So they're like way better for the environment, but also just like super handy. And like, I'm even using them. I'm pregnant at the moment. And like, as we know, like, you have stuff leaking out when you're pregnant. So I've just been wearing them as undies, and they're so useful. And then you can wear them all day for sure. Like, they're meant to be for a day, and then you wash them that night and you know, wear them at night. And I think it's like 8 hours. You can wear them really comfortably. And they hold up to 4 tampons, I think. So it's quite a lot of.
They're great at nighttime because you know how, because I used to wear a pad at night and then double undie, and then wear like when you're like in the first 2 days, like the long pad, and then like maybe just an extra pad in there in case, because you didn't want to like leak on your sheets or whatever.
Totally.
But with period undies, Roxy, you just get the super one and you just sleep in it and it doesn't leak.
And doesn't move
Sometimes
around.
It feels wet though, like inside feels wet, but the outside's not wet.
See, and I don't like, I mean, that sounds like a good deal too, because I wear tampons, but when I go to if I get up in the middle of the night to go pee, then I forget that I have the tampon in.
Yeah.
And then you pee on the string.
To sleep?
Well, I mean, when I have my period, I do.
You do?
Well,
that's not good.
Well, I can't bleed on the. Where am I? I mean,
there's toxic after 6 hours or something. Isn't there more of a risk of toxic shock syndrome?
Toxic shock syndrome.
I mean, I don't sleep more than 4. You know, so I like, you know, but I forget at night and I pee and the string gets wet, you know, and then I'm like, oh, and then I have to change it, and then I've woken myself up. So
I have a visual right now.
I just see it.
Have your visual of your wet tampon string that you have to change every 4 hours because you don't want to get toxic shock syndrome. So you're waking your. What happens if that's one day that you decide to sleep 10 hours, Roxy? I wouldn't wear tampons at night.
I think I'm going to try these period underwears, but I do have to say,
them.
Okay, I'm a little scared of the cup though. Just when I think about it, because I don't know, like, logistically.
Yeah, what if it falls? What if it gets stuck up there?
Well, I had a moment where it literally got stuck up there, and I had like full-on anxiety. And it lodged itself in some weird way, and it was like it basically flipped inside me, right? So I don't know if you've seen one, but they kind of have these little tails. So it's like a cup with a little tail at the bottom of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know what I did, but somehow, and I actually think it was because it was one of the first times I wore one after having Flynn, my baby. Mm-hmm. And I obviously everything had been lodged in there, and I had a lot more space going on, and it had flipped around, and the tail bit was facing upwards and poking into me. And like, so the cup bit was facing down, the tail was facing up. I got this excruciating pain. I went to the bathroom to try and like get it out, and I realized I couldn't get it out because I couldn't pull on the little tab thing to pull it down. And it was the most terrifying experience I can ever tell you, but our bodies are amazing, and my body just knew what to do, and it like honestly it was like an involuntary push that just like pushed it out for me. But wow, that did terrify me, and I went aside.
Well, I guess we've spoken to a lot of pelvic experts, and I guess they can fish that stuff out.
Yeah,
I mean, worst case, I was going to go and get it fished out, but it honestly, our body, like, because I guess it really can't go up that far. Like at the end of the day, it's quite a large thing, right? Like it can't really go that far. It was just, I could feel it. I just couldn't grab it because it was facing flipped up. But that was, and then I realized very quickly, and someone said to me, like, after you've had a kid, you kind of have to go up a size in the cup because everything is, you've got more space up there.
Except C-sections. Roxy and I are struggling to get a tampon up there right now. So.
Oh, right. Okay. I didn't know. Yeah. There you go.
Can't even get like a finger up there. I'm like, it's really quite stressful for me. I can get a tampon. It's really hard for me to get a tampon out. Like,
Do you use with the applicator or without the applicator?
I cannot do without applicators. I can't even get it up there. The applicator I can, but it's so painful. I haven't used tampons in years because I've heard that it's really bad to stop the flow of blood. I don't know if it's different with the cup because it catches it rather than absorbs the blood.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. Yeah. I mean,
I haven't used tampons in years.
That's crazy. And do you know what else is so funny here in Australia? Yeah. We don't have the applicators. We only have like normal tampons. Which surely you know that. Yeah.
I don't know that. I must have been in the States so long. I mustn't have worn.
We only have like the tiny little tampons, and actually it was so funny because I had a business over in the States.
I'm
in
Googling
LA.
this right now.
Yeah, just Google Australian tampons.
Australian tampons.
We've actually in the last year, like a few companies have bought applicators out, and everyone's like, "What is this gigantic tampon?" Because everyone thought it was like the whole thing. But when I was in the US and Jesse, my husband, was with me, and I got my period, I said, "Hey, can you run down and get some tampons for me?" And he like came back with the most mortified look on his face, and he's like, "These are the only things I could find," and they were these like huge things because he didn't know what the applicator part was, and we don't have them in Australia. It's really quite funny.
That's so funny. I wonder
it
what
says
that
here
is.
it's not as readily available in Australia than it was in the US.
Like our little packets of tampons are this big. They're like little, like a clutch
baby
size.
ones.
Like but we didn't know any. I honestly didn't even know there was an option for an applicator, and probably until about 5 years ago, I'd never seen or heard of one.
You're like game changer.
Yeah, it was quite weird, but I was also like, do you really need one? Like I was like, why do you need this?
I need an applicator. I can't get anything up that far.
So interesting. Yeah.
And then I lost my tampon when I was 17. I went to a rage and I drank too much, and I had a tampon in when I went in, and then I didn't have one when it came out. And so we went to the doctor. We went to the doctor the next day to try to find it. No one pulls it out, Roxy, if that's what you're trying to say. No one pulls it out. I was 17. Don't be gross. I lost my virginity at like 18 and a half, okay?
I'll give you the extra year and a half, okay?
Oh, wow.
Year and a half. Give me that year and a half. I was a good girl. I lost it. So that was that.
What, it actually just came out? Where did it go?
I really don't know to this day.
Could be still there.
It could still be up there. We really don't know. Well, we don't have much time with you left. I love this wonderful conversation about hormones and female
so
issues and all the things. So I think the main thing I want to get out of this show, especially for our listeners who are really struggling, is like, and you had tapped a little bit into this, but I do feel like, what are your main advice, food and supplement wise, or like an overall like a package of advice to people who have PCOS, endometriosis, hormone issues? What would you reduce, and what would you put into your diet, or anything that you would do?
So I think, first of all, with diet, I think the easiest way I can probably explain this is to use what I call like the crowded out method, which is essentially rather than, because I think everyone freaks out, like in the PCOS world, there's like this keto world, it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, it's everything is like, get rid of everything. And what I actually have found at the end of the day for me was, rather than eliminating everything completely, and I am actually predominantly plant-based, but I do eat eggs and I do eat fish, and I do eat carbs, and I just think let's crowd in as many good fruits and veggies and whole foods as possible. And eventually what's going to happen is, by default, you'll be crowding out some of those other foods that maybe aren't as great. So, and really take a good look at like what could be inflammatory for you. I know for me in the beginning, gluten was actually really inflammatory, and I didn't realize how inflammatory it was. Over time, I've actually found that I can tolerate it a lot better. And I think that's because my gut health has improved. My overall inflammation has been reduced. So that's one thing to look at. And obviously just anything that you know is inflammatory, I would just recommend getting rid of it, even if it's for a trial period.
Some people are like literally have no idea what an inflammatory food is.
So inflammatory food, it could be anything. For some people, it's meat products, particularly meat products that aren't organic or pasture raised, like red meat products. Anything, a lot of the things that aren't organic in general, because they're sprayed with pesticides and chemicals and all that kind of stuff. So eating organic when you can, I know that can be really expensive. So just wherever you can. There's actually a great thing called the Clean 15, which I recommend people looking at, because it's
strawberries are so dirty.
Some things are a lot more likely to have a lot more chemicals on them than others, and so you can kind of pick and choose what you buy organic based on that. Anything that's refined, so refined carbohydrates, stick to the complex ones, so the whole grains and all that kind of stuff. Dairy can be inflammatory for some people, but other people find that they're okay with it. For me, again, dairy was inflammatory, so I decided to get rid of that. It's like,
how do people know? Trial and error.
You might also just find like a lot of, how there's like the A2 milks and stuff, like some people find if they switch to that, they're okay, but you have to give your body time. It doesn't happen overnight. It could take 3 months to see results. So with the diet stuff, you got to be persistent. Actually, with all this stuff, you got to be persistent. You got to give yourself, say, hey, I'm going to dedicate 3 to 6 months to this, and that I'm really going to commit to it. So diet is one thing, and then alcohol, all that kind of stuff that we spoke about can be inflammatory. Different things for different people. And that's why it's, we're all individuals. Bio-individuality is a big thing here. So don't, just because you've heard it on someone else's Instagram doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right for you. You have to sort of look into this yourself. In terms of like herbs and supplements, I'm a huge believer in herbs. That's why I literally started an organic herbal tea company, which focuses on herbs that are specific for hormone health, PCOS, fertility. Actually ended up making like a lactation one because I struggled with breastfeeding myself. I've just brought out a pregnancy one because I'm pregnant at the moment. Herbs can be great. I worked with a naturopath with those. You might want to see a naturopath yourself. There's some great, like even herbs like spearmint, for example, it's proven to help lower testosterone. So if you suffer from high testosterone levels, that's a natural proven herb that can help you just by drinking tea, which is insane, I think. And we discount that a lot of the time. And then you've got other things that are really common deficiencies. Like I said before, zinc is a really big one. You might want to look at supplementing. Magnesium is another one. B12 is another one. There's so many out there, but those are the basic ones that you can look at straight away and know that it's quite likely you will benefit from supplementing, as well as vitamin D, which is the sunshine vitamin. So just making sure you're getting enough vitamin D during the day. Literally 10 to 20 minutes of unfiltered sunshine should be enough for you without having to supplement. But unfiltered means like no sunscreen, no hat. So you do have to be quite sun smart and make sure that you're protecting yourself. And then again, like stress is a big one. And I think one thing we discount a lot when it comes to stress is exercise. So like, yes, we might be stressed about finances, work, whatever, being a mum, but you might also be stressing yourself unnecessarily with the workouts that you do. So just taking a really good hard look at like, how intense do I go? Sorry.
Because no one like really understands, that's not true. I'll say that again. I think it's interesting for people to realize that like a hard hit workout actually raises your cortisol levels post workout. So if you struggle with, so I struggle with anxiety, and so I always get anxious an hour after my workout, and then it actually gets better, right? So over like the 4 or 5 hours, the cortisol really drops. But yeah, I mean, no one really talks about the fact that your workouts could be making you anxious and could be affecting your hormones.
I know. And it's a tricky one because I know for a lot of people, like the workout is the release, right? Like they feel like that's a really great release for them, and it's that downtime. And even for me, like I was really having to switch my mindset from like, I actually don't need to go kill myself for it to be beneficial for me. And I can tell you point blank, like I literally do yoga, I do a little bit of Pilates, and I walk and I garden and I surf. And like, that's all I really do now. And my weight I've not gained. In fact, my weight is much more manageable now than it was when I was working out a lot more. So I think that that's a big indication that for me and my body, what I do now is much more beneficial than what I was doing. And my body responds to this much better. There are some women who can tolerate more, and that's great. And if you know that that's you, go for it. But it wasn't me. And I think it's been really beneficial for me to tone that down and just go with what feels good. And I think if it feels good for you and you enjoy it, it's probably doing you benefits. Like that's the reality. Sleep is another really big one. I think we discount how important sleep is. I know you girls just said you're not sleeping. So that's a massive one. And obviously when we sleep, that's a big time for our hormones to be resetting and doing all their things. So if you're not getting great sleep, your hormones are probably going to be unbalanced, and that's the reality of it. And like, that's why I think as well, when we're postpartum, so many mothers we get so many other symptoms as well, because we're just getting all that broken sleep, and it's really tough. But getting 8 hours of quality sleep in the dark is really, really important if you can. Lots of water. Like there's just so many different things you can be doing, but again, it comes down to the individual person. And I do think as well, like, be your own advocate, stand up for yourself. If you think something's not right, it's probably not right. And don't stop until you get the answers that you want. I think I've gone down many different routes. I've gone down Chinese medicine, naturopathic, Ayurveda. I've pulled things from all of those different types of modalities and I use them. It doesn't necessarily matter to do them all the time anymore, but they've definitely found great things from all of those different modalities that I've been able to bring into my life. And don't stop at just one because you think that it didn't work or you felt like it, you didn't get anything out of it. Like there's more out there. There's different people to try. And I do think natural health is having a real big moment at the moment as well. So you can really find people that are specific. Like so many places now focus on fertility and hormones. And if you can find people like that really want to invest in you and your health, like that's a game changer.
And then also too, I think it really helps to get your hormones tested, right? To have blood tests and see what your levels are and check those levels with your doctor just to see if maybe you need like further testing or you need an ultrasound to kind of really get a good look in there, right?
That's where you should be starting.
The problem is with hormone testing, and what I've found over the years is that your hormones fluctuate daily. So what happens is like when people test, because my hormones look great, right? But I know I have hormonal issues. But maybe when I got tested, that my hormones were great on that day. So if it wasn't a huge excessive of estrogen or progesterone, it wasn't such a big number, then they say you're fine because it's kind of like a one size fits all. But I know with some of these tests, like the geome tests or something, whatever they're called, you actually have to pee in a little cup every day for 10 days over the course of the month to actually really see how your levels are spiking within your luteal phase and the follicular phase and all those different changes. Sometimes I feel like it's like one size fits all. They just do a blood test and they go, nope, you're fine. Yeah. But I feel like it's so much more broken down than that. I mean, it's in the minutia of. That's like, right. Yeah.
We have we cycle, you know, like we have a cycle. So depending on the day, the time, like literally the time of the day will make a difference when we test our hormones. So with men, it's not the same. They can pretty much take their hormones or do any testing at any point throughout the month, and it's not really going to affect them too much. With us, we really every day and at every point in our day, there's going to be different things going on. I will also say on that note is normal doesn't mean optimal. So just because your doctor comes back to you and says that your results are normal, their span for what normal is actually really large. So what I found is I had doctors telling me that my results were normal for a lot of things. And then I took them to, let's say, a naturopath, and she looked at them and she goes, you're so far from being where you should be, it's not even funny, you know? And like, that's something really important to keep in mind, is that if you've gone back, your doctor's told you your results are normal, but you still don't feel right, get a second opinion, because normal does not mean optimal. And we want to be optimal. We want to be functioning at the best that we possibly can.
Good point. That's a good point.
Well, Roxy Socks, let's get our hormones in check, Roxy Soxy.
Yes, we need to. Can we do a 2-for-1?
We can do a twofer. No, it's hard because like I'll go into this, and I know you know this too. You do this. You told me, Rox, but like you'll get into like this good rut, and you'll be like, great, I'm eating well, and I'm exercising, and I'm feeling good, and my hormones feel good, and then like it's that consistency. And maybe it's just that we go too hard too fast. Maybe that's our issue, is like we go, well, we're going to do it this way and we're not going to bend. If we just accept that, you know, some days will be great and we'll be able to take care of ourselves in every aspect, and other days we're going to drink 3 mojitos and have a Magnum ice cream. You know what I mean? Like you just have to accept that you do the best you can with where you're at in your day and your life and your stresses, and no one is living this perfect
no. And I think as well, keep in mind, like I went pretty hardcore for like 3 to 6 months, but then over time I've been able to reintroduce stuff that I never thought I would be able to. I can eat bread, like, you know, a good quality sourdough bread now, no dramas. I can have the occasional wine, no dramas. Like I didn't reintroduce caffeine just because I never felt like I wanted it again. But you know, there's like, it took time for my body to heal, the inflammation to come down, my gut to reset, like my hormones to rebalance, and now I can tolerate a lot more than what I used to be able to tolerate. So it's not like you have to live this restrictive, horrible life. You know, that's not what no one wants to do that. It's like, maybe we need to give our body a bit of time to heal and recover and rebalance. And then we might be able to reintroduce those things. And you might also not want to reintroduce a lot of those things. I think that's what a lot of people find, is they don't necessarily want to go back to what they were doing prior to that.
Sometimes you lose the craving entirely. You know? Yeah,
for sure. For sure. It's like you said with the coffee, you know, you don't no longer want any coffee, and that's not a big part of your life. And I was exactly the same. And, now I couldn't imagine not having tea, but that's great because tea's great for me. And like, that's a big part of my day. And that's my ritual, you know, making a pot of tea, as opposed to what used to be my ritual was going and getting a coffee. And it was kind of like a social thing, I felt like, just to like go and get one, but now it's not, and I don't miss it. So yeah, definitely just, also, you know, people get scared of fats. Like, don't be scared of good fats. Fats are your hormones need fats. Your hormones do need carbs. Like, there's a big thing in the hormone world where we just cut out big chunks of groups of food. And like, that's not necessarily beneficial. But get your hormones tested, find a great practitioner, look at herbs, see if there's any nutritional deficiencies that can be addressed, and go from there.
Good plan.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Brigitte, for coming and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram, which is PCOS_2_wellness. Otherwise, my website, which is just PCOS2wellness.com. And I've got all my blog posts on there. I've got all my products and teas on there. I talk about my journey on there. Like, I'm pretty open about everything. So between that and Instagram, you'll pretty much know everything about my life.
Let's get it. Good.
Awesome. And where can you find us, Roxy Soxy?
You can find us on Women and
Do it in an Australian accent. Do it on an Australian accent.
Okay, wait, okay, here we go. Hold on. I got to go from London.
Everyone, please.
Shrimp on the Bobby. Okay. You can find us on, Shrimp on the Bobby. Okay. You can find us on Women on Top Official.
You just went Southern so You can find us on Women on Top Official down here in Australia.
I totally went to my Texas. What the hell?
We're down here, and you can find us on Women on Top Official. We have a clubhouse group.
And you can find us
so
at Shrimp on the
funny.
Bobby, Shrimp on the Bobby, Shrimp on the Bobby.
Shrimp on the Bobby.
Oh, we don't even say that. I just find it. Do you find it so funny that that's what people think of when you say doing a
Totally.
I know, so like Shrimp on the Bobby. Good day, mate. How's it
Good
going?
day, mate.
Yeah.
How about the Fosters?
Well, since Roxy's never going to get it out, you guys can find us on Women on Top Official on Instagram.
Women on Top podcast on Facebook. Y'all, we got a Facebook group. Women on
What is
Top
that
Clubhouse.
accent?
It's for Texas.
Anyway.
And don't forget
And I'm Tam and Sursa.
And I rock the man and y'all. And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and comment.
Yeah, we both can do this exit. And we are
women
on top.
y'all come
Y'all.
here.